It's a great joy to see so many faces around this room of people that I haven't seen for 3 years, but whom I met at the World Congress in Dublin, and it's good to renew old acquaintance. But I'm aware that there are also quite a number of people here that I haven't met and who may not have been to an event like this before. And although the task that Liz gave me was to do an update on what the UK, Ireland, DSMIG people have been up to, I think it's probably important to set things in context a little bit for those of you who may not have met us before, and to explain a little bit about what UK, Ireland, DSMIG does anyway. So, the roots of this particular group go back now nearly 20 years, and I think it all started when Liz and another former chair of DSMIG, Jennifer Dennis, who were both acting as advisors to the Down Syndrome Association, decided to organise a conference in London looking at the medical aspects of Down syndrome. And following that conference, a number of people got together and got in contact with Jennifer and Liz, saying, really, can we share ideas and work together to try to improve the provision of medical care and health care for people of all ages with Down syndrome? And as these things do, this led to a relatively small meeting in a hot and stuffy room in London in, I think, 1995, when several people got together and talked about what they would like to do, and over the years things have escalated. And we're now a registered charity, amongst other things. And according to the terms of our charitable status, the aim of DSMIG has always been to try to ensure equitable provision of medical care for people in the Republic of Ireland and the UK. Because one of the things that we discovered when we first set up the group was that even though we're an incredibly small country compared to where many of you come from, there was quite wide variation in practice. Even if you just went a few miles or kilometres down the road, and that things that some of us took for granted would happen did actually not happen in other areas when a child with Down syndrome presented. I think that has changed actually in the intervening years. I think practice has become more uniform, but of course you could have equitable provision of care throughout the country, and the care could still be dreadful. It could be universally bad, and that we don't want. So the ancillary aim of the group has had to be to try to promote best possible practice in our countries in the care of people with Down syndrome, although at the same time we've always had an awareness that we have to be realistic. Most of us work within the framework of the National Health Service, where there are financial constraints, and in a way it's no good setting people up to fail. Where there are limitations on resources, it's no good telling people that they must do the super-duper gold star thing for everybody, if realistically that's not going to be practicable. So we have to temper ideals with reality. So the group has grown, and these are the most up-to-date figures that I can give you for our membership. I think we were about 5 or 6 when we started, and our current membership is just over 150. To be a full member of DSMIG, you don't have to be a doctor, you do have to be a healthcare professional. It happens that the majority of our members are doctors, and within doctors there is a preponderance of paediatricians, although we're very, very welcoming to our colleagues who practice in the adult world, because we sense that in a way a lot has happened in relation to the children. There is always more work to be done, but perhaps there's even more work to be done in relation to the care of adults, who of course are growing in numbers with increased life expectancy. So we're always very pleased when an adult colleague shows their head above the parapet and wants to join. But we also have representatives of all the other health professions that you can think of, really, and occasionally we have some difficulty deciding who is a healthcare professional, but we resolve it. Most of the members come from the UK or from Ireland, but interestingly a number of people from other countries have found us and have asked to come into full membership. Sometimes these are people who come from countries where there isn't really an equivalent to our group, and they may be people who are practicing in relative isolation. And the internet is a great tool for people in that situation, but it's always lovely when we meet them face to face, sometimes at meetings like this one or at our own meetings. Other people come from countries where clearly there is an active programme for the care of people with Down syndrome going on, but they want to be affiliated with us in the UK as well, which always makes us feel rather honoured. So if any of you are here, you know we're very pleased that you've joined us. And then we have a small number of associate members who are people who make a real contribution to the care of people with Down syndrome and who are interested in the medical and health aspects, but who don't actually rank for full membership because they're not in fact card-carrying health professionals. So we've had to create a slightly separate category of membership for them. And in addition to our individual members, a number of organisations within the UK and Ireland are affiliated to us, and they're listed here. So just to give you a flavour of where our overseas members come from, we don't actually have a membership drawn from every continent in the world, and perhaps that should be our next ambition, but it's quite widespread. And of course you'll see that, as I said, some people come from quite small countries. I think, for example, of our Icelandic member, and I understand that the population of Iceland is about the same as the area of London in which I practice medicine. So of course I'm the only person in my area who really looks after children with Down syndrome to a great extent, but our member in Iceland fulfills the same role that I do, but he has an entire country to deal with. And of course if he wants to meet other people who are working actively in the field, he really has to come abroad. The one continent which isn't represented here is Africa. Maybe that will change after this meeting this week. It would be good. And so what does DSNIG do? These are things that have grown up over years, and these are our core activities. We host a couple of meetings every year for members, but part of the meeting, the major part of the meeting, is an open meeting, and these are educational meetings which people can use for their continuing professional development. We try to have a theme or a couple of themes for the meeting and group together a number of talks from experts in the field, which can serve to update people. Occasionally we'll host a much larger meeting, which becomes more of a national event with a larger audience. We have, since the beginning, been running an information service based in the area of Nottingham, where Liz works, where we have our couple of paid members of staff. Most of the people who belong to DSNIG do all this voluntarily, but we are very lucky that we have a couple of part-time paid members of staff to help us. The information service was really set up as an offshoot for the work that some people were doing with the Down Syndrome Association, because we realised that a lot of people are trying to find information about specific questions, and where these questions relate to medical or health topics, the Down Syndrome Association was tending to come to us for help. But increasingly, we're finding that we're also acting as an information source for other health professionals who maybe can't find the answers that they need and who come through to us. So we deal with a lot of individual queries. We've had to network and to set up a database of well-intentioned and friendly specialists in specific areas, such as dermatology or gastroenterology, whom we can go to when we have a question to which we don't know the answer. And we've been building up a fairly eclectic reference library, looking at the sort of issues that come up. We have a website which is about to undergo a revision, which is important because it's got a little bit out of date, but we know that a lot of people nationally and internationally use our website. One of the biggest things that we've done has been to produce the UK guidelines, which we've already heard mentioned today. At the moment, these are 6 in number, and we try very hard to make them evidence-based, looking at specific aspects of healthcare for people with Down syndrome. We've resisted the temptation to write guidelines based on what we all do in our day-to-day work and think is a good idea, because at the end of the day, one person's good idea is another person's bad idea. And sadly, the evidence is not always very plentiful, but we've tried to use it where we can. We've pioneered growth charts for children with Down syndrome in the UK, based on UK data. These did not exist before DSNIG came into being. And PCHR in the UK stands for Personal Child Health Record. This is a book which is now given to the parent of every newborn baby in the UK, which contains advice for parents on the health care of their babies and young children. It contains sections where information about the child can be recorded, And for children with Down syndrome, we've pioneered a supplement that fits into the book very nicely, which addresses specifically issues to do with children with Down syndrome. And we understand that this is in widespread use and that most, though not all, children in the UK who have Down syndrome have access to this and have been provided with it. This is just an example of the sort of flyer that we hand out in great numbers at any meetings or conferences that we get invited to, because although we think we're doing a good job, every time we go to a meeting we'll always come across somebody who's never heard of us, and that's quite salutary for us in remembering that we're not as good as we might think we are, so we do a lot of publicity. And this is just a view of one of the pages of our website to give you an idea of the sort of stuff you'll find there, although it's undergoing revision at the moment, so hopefully it will look brighter and better soon. And so, to bring us to what we've actually been up to since Dublin 2009, what are the new things that we've been doing? The first task, which I think will always feature in any talk that we give, is updating the guidelines. Because of course when we first wrote the guidelines back in the mid-90s, it probably did occur to us, but it has occurred to us a lot more sharply since then, that this was not a task that was going to be over and done with. Because of course things move on and things change in the world of medicine and we have to update the guidelines, and we're always going to be updating the guidelines as far as I can see, unless the group ceases to exist. So we've been busy, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. We've also, since 2009, completely redone the insert that goes in the personal child health record, because the first one we did was starting to look a bit dated, and again had to take